Welcome to the Regista Room, the podcast where soccer goes off field. Here's your host, Paul Varian.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Regista Room where amateur soccer goes off field. Paul Varian here, glad to be with you as always, dropping a final episode for 2025 before I call it a day and focus on some holiday fun. So in this episode, we're going to look at leadership again, but this time from a more dynamic perspective, highlighting a growing trend we're seeing in amateur soccer, one of technical leaders progressing to broader general management roles in soccer organizations. Casually put, it's technical directors becoming executive directors. Yep, coach leaders exchanging their tracksuits for blue suits in broader sport organizational leadership. And folks, this is starting to happen a lot. I know a lot of clubs that have progressed this route. They've promoted their technical director to an overall club leadership role, whether that's an executive director or a general manager position. And we're going to hear from a few soccer leaders who've pursued this career route on this episode and find out exactly how they fared moving from on-field to off-field leadership. And it should be noted, this concept of convergence in technical and executive leadership, it's not just restricted to the dynamic of technical directors becoming executive directors. Indeed, in some cases, it's extending to role convergence too. So that means that some clubs are combining technical director and executive director positions to be one, usually called the executive director, but they're also fulfilling the technical leadership role, usually supported by a strong team of staff coaches and business support people. So why is that happening? Well, as usual, there's a number of likely reasons. And in the case of amalgamation of two positions, some people rather cynically say that it's clubs just simply trying to cut costs on their salaries by getting the executive director to do two jobs for one pay. But honestly, I don't see that. More often, these positions are arising when clubs are actually trying to step up to add executive capabilities on their payroll that previously didn't exist before, and they feel a hybrid role is the best place to start. So these roles aren't, from where I see it, producing a reduction in executive positions or leadership positions, but the opposite. They're actually clubs trying to create such positions. But either way, it's evidence that technical expertise that some say has no mandatory place in a true executive director's core skill set is working its way into modern sport leaders' backgrounds. So, conversations I've had with the boards of directors who've hired technical leaders into executive leadership positions say they've done it because they feel technical expertise gives their executive director tacit skill with which to oversee and manage technical personnel, namely the technical director, but also staff coaches, sports science meds providers, other soccer-specific stuff. And this may be the case, but the risk in going this route that you see is that most technical directors have little or no business training, particularly in must-have areas like finance, risk management, sponsorship, sales, marketing, and communications, and the like. Sadly, many technical directors don't succeed in blue suit roles, in my experience. And this is usually because they haven't understood the role they're moving into, or they haven't pursued the training and development needed to fill their skills gaps, where they have no experience, or they think they can simply lean back on their previous technical expertise, know-how, and get things done that way. You throw in a board of directors that doesn't respect the transition that this new technical director will undoubtedly have to go through getting up to speed in the new role, and your executive director is basically set up for failure in their first year. So yes, crossing the mountains from the land of coaching to the land of sport executive management is fraught with danger and risk, and many who try simply don't make it. But some do. And it may not surprise you that when technical directors do successfully transition into executive leadership, the organizations they lead do very well. But hey, don't take it from me. As is always the case in the Regista Room, we let case study examples in amateur soccer speak for themselves. So today we're going to hear from executive directors in 4 of the most successful amateur soccer clubs in Canada, all of whom have come into their roles from previous technical leadership positions. This and more coming away after this short break on the Regista Room where amateur soccer goes off field. See you all shortly.
Are you an amateur sport leader looking for quality professional development? If so, your search is over. Introducing Capitus Consulting's new sport business tutorial series. We'll teach you what you need to do to run your club better. These tutorials target the key areas of sport business: governance, risk, planning, marketing, technical oversight, sponsorship, and modern volunteerism. Access and enjoy these tutorials when you want and where you want.
Go to capitaslearning.com
And get learning with me today.
Do you have a story to tell? The Regista Room is built on real-world stories and experiences from amateur soccer clubs everywhere that we can explore, discuss, and learn from. Have you innovated a solution to a problem, challenged the norm, tried something different, thought outside the box, or taken a risk, and it's paid off? If so, we want to hear from you on the Regista Room. Contact us today with your story at content@registaroom.com. And let's better the game with our shared soccer experiences.
Welcome back, folks. So as I said before the break, we wanted to hear from technical directors in Canadian amateur soccer who successfully made the transition to broader general sport management. What motivated them to do this? What were the challenges? Where did their technical expertise help them? And what would they say to ambitious young coach leaders who are looking to do the same thing? So, I sat 4 top executive directors from highly successful Canadian amateur soccer clubs down around a virtual table and discussed this with them. Sarah Maglio is the executive director at Coquitlam Metro Ford Soccer Club in British Columbia, one of Canada's most well-developed and successful youth clubs. Gregor Young, also in Vancouver, is the executive director at Vancouver United Soccer Club, which is also one of Canadian club soccer's best-in-class leaders. And I've spoken with admiration on this podcast in the past, and in my book, Don't Blame the Soccer Parents, of Queen City United Soccer Club in Regina in Canada's Prairie Province of Saskatchewan. So guess what? Their executive director, Hugh Dooley, who's also come from a technical background, joins our discussion group. And finally, out on Canada's East Coast, the largest and arguably most sophisticated amateur soccer club in Eastern Canada, United DFC, have a new executive director, Nino Kovacevic, who also has a technical background, both at club and regional level. All join me to discuss their stories and thoughts on technical leaders becoming executive directors. So settle back, have a listen. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Regista Room. Thanks for joining me today. And you are, of course, all former tracksuit leaders. So you're former technical directors. You've come through coaching backgrounds and playing backgrounds as well, but have found yourself with a suit on and in the executive director's chair. And there's a lot of people I know out there, folks, who are considering this career pathway, but are a little anxious about pursuing it. So it's great to have you on today to talk about your experiences moving into this position and the experiences you're having with them. Nino, I'll start with you. Like, how did you end up moving into the ED position? And was it something you'd always thought you wanted to do, or was this something that you it fell into your lap, so to speak?
Yeah, great question. And thanks for having me on. I did a 10-year goal for myself. So I started in the industry in 2015 and drew down a 10-year goal for myself. And at 10 years, one of the things I wanted to do was have a master's in an area that benefited the space and lead an org. So not specific to being an executive director, but being in a leadership position within an organization. And so it was a goal. And specifically how this one came about was I had been in roles of a director of development in a region, and then moved on to working for the province. And I've always just looked above the role that I was in seeing how I could better benefit the space. And so I always told myself that if there was an opportunity at an executive director's role within a club, I would seriously consider it. And one came up, and I was able to get the role. So that's the quick of it, anyways.
Super, thanks. So let's go 4 hours time zones back and to the west coast of the country. From Halifax, we're going to go to Coquitlam with Sarah Maglio from Coquitlam Metro Ford. Sarah, how did you transition, if you want to say it that, from technical to executive director?
Yeah, thanks, Paul, for having me on today. So When I look back, when I started, gosh, almost probably 30 years ago, in the youth soccer space, there was very few even technical directors at the time. So Gregor, who's also on this call, was one of the first ones as well. So I think for my story, it's more about the evolution of soccer clubs, and where things have evolved to. So, back from when clubs only had one technical director in place and everything else was volunteer, obviously things have really evolved from the business side. And so, being involved with my club now for over 20 years with Coquitlam Metro Ford, naturally those positions started to evolve. And as technical director, you were kind of doing a whole bunch of things that just weren't on field things. So I think more in my position, it just evolved into that. And when that position was available, it fit my life, and it fit what I wanted to do.
Yeah, yeah, interesting you say that because I'm thinking immediately of the technical director diploma that I teach out in BC, and it's pretty much all business training, right? I mean, obviously the technical stuff is taught through coaching badges and so on, but it is clearly that's the skill set that drives it and the work you end up having to do. Gregor, your story, you're right. I mean, I didn't think of that, but both of you have been your organizations have really grown up around you. It's interesting to see.
Uh, you're right, Paul. And actually, that technical director diploma was a piece in my transition from being technical director to executive director, because I think it was soon after that our club president, Mark Monroe, met with you and decided we needed to become a modern club and restructure and create an executive director position. And I was ready for a change. And I was fortunate that I had a very engaged, supportive board. And they did do a proper process. It wasn't handed to me. They brought in some people from different provinces and interviewed them, but I was fortunate enough to get it. And it's been eye-opening, and it's been great because it fits my sort of control freak tendencies to want to be in charge and be able to make the decisions. And some of that so much before we had an executive director, but I get to do it now.
You mean there aren't any control freak technical directors out there, Gregor? Come now, please.
Uh, Not at our club.
Not at your club. I'm pleased to hear it. Hugh Dooley in the great province of Saskatchewan. Tell us your story.
Well, my story is a little longer. I think I think I beat everybody here. I've been in the game since 40 years now. Started right at 18, going hardcore when coaching was volunteering, and you even paid your own hotel rooms and your own food when you coached somebody else's kids, if you remember those days. Um, and I went back to I was working out in Ottawa, in Ontario, for the Ottawa Fury and the district out there, while working for Nortel. And I wanted to go back to school and finish a degree I had started back in 1986 that I just had never completed with kids and family. So we moved back to Saskatchewan, went back to school, finished my degree in kinesiology with a major in sport admin, and started working for the club 20 years ago. So I've been with Queen City for about 20 years now. And it's just like you guys have said, it's an evolution of a club, right? When I started, there was 100 and some kids. The budget was $50,000. Like that was the annual budget for this organization. Um, and now just as we've grown, moving into a facility, taking on that sort of liability every month, and the number of players we run and the different type of programming we do, there was just no time for me to be TD and the business side, because our board transitioned fairly quick into more of a governance board. Um, Probably ahead of a few organizations in a sense that way. I was very lucky. The board sort of said, go ahead, this is what we want, go ahead and do it. And never really had too much pushback over the 20 years, little bumps here and there, but yeah. And so just the evolution of the organization, we needed somebody in more of a technical role, move myself into the other role that the board basically said, yeah, let's move you up. And then took one of our other staff members and moved them into my role. And yeah, I like Gregor. I'm a bit of a controller. Um, so it's worked well. And I think it's worked well because you've got to also, I think, have some form of the technical understanding to really be part of the club, even in the ED role or sporting director role, so that you have a real understanding of the issues that they face in their roles below you in the capacity of technical side. That was
Yeah,
about it for me, Paul.
yeah, thanks. I think it's great that you have clearly got proactive organizations that make these positions, but then also have the courage to promote from within and put leadership that's proven into these roles. I've always felt one of the biggest weaknesses we have in the industry is we just don't have opportunities for people to progress on and up in organizations because we just don't have huge staff structures. So it's great that you guys have found a way to sort of grow with the organization in that regard. Um, but it can't have been easy. I mean, let's talk a little bit about that transition and where the difficulties, the really hard parts are, and where you felt sort of most uncomfortable. Q, I'm with you already, so let's continue with you on that one. Where was this difficult?
Um, for me, it's the difficult part is giving up the technical control. Um, I still know the vast majority of every player, the coaches and parents. So because of our size, I have that capacity, but giving up the technical stuff to my technical director and my other technical leads and saying, you know what,
Yeah.
I gotta bite my tongue here. They gotta try, try things that they want to try, and I've gotta support them and help them get it accomplished.
Did you
So
find that?
that's been a hard one.
Yeah, did you find that with your parent groups as well, that they just kept coming back to you as the TD and you had to sort of lever them away from that relationship?
Yeah, yeah, for the first little bit, but not it wasn't as that part probably wasn't as bad because I really told them don't knock on my door if it's not to do with registration or policy process or bigger questions. Like come
Yeah.
to me when you basically come to me when the guy down the hall hasn't answered your question and you're still angry, then you can come talk to me. But so I wasn't there. It was more of an internal struggle, Paul,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
of just saying, you know what, you gotta let go of the reins here a little bit.
Yeah. Nino, let's turn to you out in Halifax because, of course, you have an interesting background. Then you've worked for governing body as well, and you've had regional technical authority rather than even just club authority. So, what have been the challenges been to you to come literally right into the grassroots, but be in a non-coaching role?
Uh, I think the challenge for me is not necessarily from a giving up standpoint, but if I have competency in some of the on-field matters, not being pulled into those just because I can, right? So if you look at the roles that we occupy, they are removed from the field. We might have that expertise. Um, and I think people might engage us knowing that. But in order to be effective in this role, the executive director role doesn't go on the field like a technical director does, right? And so it's always been telling myself that even though I might have the capability to step in and maybe fix something quickly or add value quickly, that by me doing that, actually, I'm probably coaching people around me to expect that
Yeah.
and then having to hold myself accountable to whatever that line is so I can be more effective in this role and learn some of the things that I naturally will have to because I'm in this space
Yeah.
for the first time,
Yeah,
right?
when I coach boards, we call it noses in, fingers out, right? Just this idea of overseeing, but it must be very tempting, especially when you're passionate about coaching and you just want to get the old boots on and get out and start coaching. Sarah, how's it been for you at Metro Forward?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what Hugh says, just because not being on the technical side and working directly on the field with players and families and coaches, you actually lose a little bit of that connectivity in the community. Because, at least for me, I'm behind a computer a lot, and people of 10 years later, a lot of people wouldn't even recognize me anymore. Whereas, I guess that's a good thing or bad thing. I can go to the grocery store without a parent wanting a conversation. Good and bad with that because I really like the community aspect of that. Um, I would say another thing. I mean, again, this position's evolved so much in the last 10 years, but to begin with, having to be an expert in every area that you hadn't been before. So whether that be budgeting, financial, HR. So that was probably a stretch at first, to be able to come on and be expected to be an expert in all those areas. Um, 10 years later, we've really evolved and been able to hire more people with those areas of expertise like HR, finance, marketing, which has made things a lot easier. And then again, my role evolved to be more managing those people than actually having to do all of those things as well. So
Yeah, yeah,
I would say that that would be a big transition.
yeah, yeah. Gregor, at Vancouver United, how about you?
Since Sarah echoed Hugh, I'll echo what something Nino said that was very relevant for me. And it was something that a board member noted that there's that temptation when you've been a technical director to revert to your strengths and to go and try to fix a problem that you see there when it's no longer your role. And I had to adjust to that and leave that in the capable hands of our technical staff and our new technical director. So that was a transition. Learning the financial side was not a strength for me. That's taken some time. And increasingly, and I was warned actually by our club president, he said, you're going to be surprised by how much of this role is HR. And he said it's going to be up to about 30%. And it has been. And honestly, in the last 2 years, I would say it's been even more. I'd like to actually hear if other clubs across the country are experiencing this, but we're seeing an explosion in discipline cases, both from players and parents, particularly this year. So getting our heads around proper processes around how to handle these things has been an important transition as well.
Yeah, I would like to put that question to the group because, management is people, but I think we sometimes come at it assuming it to be something different, maybe a little bit more transactional. And I'd certainly argue in the last 20 years, the management of people has become a lot more complex than it was. Um, has the role changed a lot for you in terms of people management guys in that time? And what were there skills in managing coaches that you could transfer into this role, or was it very much sort of a different ball game? Hugh, let's go to you there.
I think on the HR part, for me, it's getting the different types of staff personalities to work together, right? So,
Mm.
I have one staff member, let's say, who's just, it's done. Like if you give him something to do, it becomes the top of his priority list and it's done tomorrow. And then he needs you to be done yours today as well. And yet the person he's working with needs 2 days to get it done or stuff like that. So you're making sure the different personalities and generations, right? So that can be a little tougher when you're dealing with a coach that's old school compared to a coach that's just starting out, and being on time means coming like 2 minutes before the session starts and not 20 minutes and stuff. So that part's been the piece that I've had to work on a lot with some of the staff coaches. As far as parents and players, we've only had a couple player discipline issues in the last probably 3 years, not many. Um, pretty pretty blunt. And then with parent issues, my last parent issue where there was something that was growing was probably about 5 years ago. Everywhere else, again, I'm smaller than everybody else, so most of the parents still know who I am by face. And we're pretty clear to parents right up front, like it's not being part of our organization is not your right. You don't
Yeah.
have, we'll gladly bring you in, but we'll gladly move you out
Yeah.
if you're just not fitting the culture of the
Yeah,
organization.
I think I'm glad you said that because I think you're not taking credit there for what you really should. And so as far as I know from your organization, you do a very good job on communications and getting out ahead of stuff. So I don't think you have these issues where clubs can sometimes stand on rakes and get in their own way by just not executing good communication in the first place. And secondly, I agree with you. Your culture is very strong. I think people know what to expect. And that helps you obviously in terms of issues. Nino, let's go over to you. How much were you surprised at, managing people and, the chaos that can involve for your job?
Uh, I mean, I've just due to the nature of the role, I expected it. Um, and so in just in my own experience as a staff member in other organizations, I kind of get a sense of maybe what I would have needed at the time, what I didn't need at the time, what I got at the time. And so I brought with me a willingness to have those conversations. So it wasn't necessarily surprising to me, and I understood the value of them. So I was happy to go through those. I think the big challenge for me on the HR side is in and around, and again, it's this towing the line of what can we do as an org and what can't we do. And so those dispute resolutions that do really evolve into something that's quite heavy, really walking the boundaries of, we're not the police and we don't have legal authority to make these decisions, and we're actually a non-for-profit sporting organization, and being able to have that conversation with people in a way that is informative and non-threatening and really educative in a setting that can be very emotional. Like the effort that's necessary to do that in a respectful way is what kind of surprised me from how much it does take out of you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so that would be something that kind of came out of the blue for me, right? And it's been very much a learning experience. But I have people around that have had experiences in conflict resolution in other settings that
yeah,
really help make
yeah,
sense
yeah.
of those experiences.
Thanks, Nino. Finally, Sarah, how about you?
Um, you know what? I am so fortunate. We have such a great staff, that do such a great job of dealing with situations. So they rarely actually get to me, only if they're really been escalated. So my management is my direct reports and dealing with that way. And then of course our board management. But the way that we have things structured in our club, we have just such a great system that it just doesn't get to me that often. So
Yeah,
way more as a technical director, I had to deal
interesting.
with people than I do at this role.
Yeah, I think I'll come back to a really strong culture you have there, Sarah. I know from people who work for you that they're really proud to work for your club, you know. So when you have that common vision, I think a lot of things that could turn into arguments or disputes just don't, you know. So that's no surprise to me.
How does your amateur sport organization measure up post-pandemic? Need to know? Capitalist Consulting is proud to bring you the Canadian Amateur Sport Health Check, the first comprehensive study of the Canadian amateur sport industry at community level, examining how it was before the pandemic and how it looks now. Built on data from hundreds of organizations just like yours, this report helps you measure your organization's recovery from the pandemic against others across the country. Participation rates, volunteer levels, sponsorship valuations, program fees and costs, and staff salary levels that give you market rates for sport job positions you simply can't find anywhere else. It's all here and much more. The Canadian Amateur Sport Health Check. Get your copy today at capitalistlearning.com.
So you're all going to be advocates for technical directors becoming executive directors, I've no doubt. But what have you found? Where are the skills and certainly the tacit knowledge you have being trained in the game when it comes to leading a soccer organization? Where would you say you would have advantages that say I wouldn't have when I was leading soccer organizations, not from a soccer background, although I was a pretty pacey right winger back in the day, but not really at the level you guys were at. Sarah, I'll stay with you. Where do you find dipping into that experience and tacit knowledge is really helpful for you?
Um, I mean, I think it's different for everyone. I mean, it sounds like people around this table today have had, a long tenure in our clubs. So I think just the experience in our own clubs and knowing our people and our culture has really helped. Um, if someone new was coming in, I don't know if it would be the same. So I think the advantage of just being in the organization for so long. But I'm not convinced you have to be. I think having a sport background or understanding what it feels like to be involved in a team sport and that piece, I'm not necessarily convinced it has to be your experience in a technical director role to do well at this job, given just how much it's advanced and some clubs with CEOs and the business background that's really needed. Um, so yeah, I think
Yeah.
there's some advantages, but I think just because just knowing the club and the community so well
Yeah.
has been helpful.
Yeah. Good. Good. I'll stay in Vancouver. Gregor, what do you think?
I think being TD, excuse me, helps helps you really because you knew the scope of the problems. You were boots on the ground. You were having more interactions with parents. You knew what was likely to come about. You knew the landscape. You knew your particular community and what their expectations were in terms of a process, in terms of communication. And when you do that for a while, you also start to realize you don't need to win. This is not a league table. You don't need to win every battle. You need to look at what is the outcome that is fair and is reasonable, and you need to get to with the person or people that you're dealing with. And when you can sort of put a bit of ego aside and not take little pokes so you can win in battle and put them in their place and get to the root of the problem and solve the problem, that's a tool that then becomes really helpful, I find, as an ED, where the range of problems is a bit different
Yeah.
and more serious, as I think Sarah alluded to. The ones that make their way up to us tend to be ones that sometimes involve lawyers, and you have to be a lot more careful in your wording.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, it must be a lot easier for you to performance manage your technical director and when you've done their job. And I would imagine they are not going to try things on, if you know what I mean, when they know. Because my favorite response from technical directors who are ineffective is they just say, well, you don't understand my job. You don't know what I'm doing. And your answer to that is, well, absolutely, I do. I did your job. So that they're going to be, easier to manage. Is that a fair assumption, Gregor? Would you say? I mean, have you found that you just you know the job, so you can actually benchmark it well, performance wise?
You can benchmark it, and it really helps in terms of when you're hiring a technical director. I mean,
Right,
I hire
of course.
a director, you know what they're up against, and is again going back to your technical director diploma program, that sort of reframed in a lot of people's minds what a TD was. And it's helpful to them to realize the expectation isn't and shouldn't be that you're on the field 30 hours a week. It's a management position. So my board expects me to hire the best people and put them in roles where they can be successful. And longevity and keeping them in those roles is also really important. So if you can get those parts right, I think you're getting it as an ED.
Yeah,
That you get good people excelling in their roles.
yeah, yeah. Excellent. Nino, what say you?
Let's say I. Um, I've always equated the role of a technical director that to like a chief product officer or a product management specialist, right? And I do think that the benefit of me having been in that space and all of us being in that space is that we have intimate knowledge of the product. Now, what is the product, right? For me, it's always been a safe and enjoyable player-coach relationship where both improve, right? And so, because I might have that sight, even though I'm not in the day-to-day details to the points that everybody made here, is we can evaluate it a lot more effectively. And then the business decisions around strategy can actually be that much more intentional as well. And we can articulate the nuance of it in those um, big strategy meetings that might happen at the board level and keep the conversation around product and experience at that high level, because I'm sure you've seen it across the country as well, where once the boards have shifted the policy, maybe that conversation isn't as present as it once they were operational. So I think for the size of our organization, and for the product to improve, those would be some of the benefits that I would currently kind of lean on,
Sure.
in addition to all the other ones that have been mentioned.
Yeah, thanks. Hugh, what about yourself? Are there times you've had to sort of lean back into your technical expertise and to do things that you couldn't otherwise have done without it?
Yeah, for sure. Like I've with our staff, it's the mentorship piece because like everybody else has said here, you've lived the roles in a variety of ways and all of our staff that are in the senior leadership role or our part-time staff have all either been coaches who've moved up or even players now, right? So two of our part-time staff are played with us, one of them played with us since he was 8 years old and now has moved in the role. And our board has had a lot of discussion internally over the last few years that we really want to hire from within. So there's a lot of mentorship to get those people to where we want them to be. It's not necessarily hiring the finished product, so to speak. Um, but can we hire from within and mentor from within to create that sense of loyalty of staying with our organization and not necessarily being here for 3 years and then looking for the next opportunity, in another city or that. So, but the ability to mentorship, Paul, having the ability to sit in their shoes with them when they need to.
Yeah. It's interesting to go back to what Gregor was saying as well. As it seems to be you're mentioning all of you, I think, being able to use sort of that tacit knowledge to either select good people, manage them, or develop them, which is really great, really great. I want to talk a little bit now about support that you got because you all mentioned you sort of it was a little daunting coming in. There were skills you had to learn, but it seems like you've all had really good support from your boards in doing that. I was at a conference this week. Sarah, you were on it with me down in Fort Worth, Texas, called Lead Plus, and it's run by a great group called the Institute of Youth Sport Leaders. And I got talking to one young executive director there who was actually running quite a sizable operation in the US, and he was having a really hard time. He'd just started the job about a year ago, and he'd come out of a technical background, and he was not only getting no support from his board, he was getting treated quite badly by his board and getting very frustrated about it. I really felt bad for the guy. I probably spent 3 or 4 hours with him over the 2 days. Um, and hearing you guys now talk about the importance of support, we've mentioned the technical director's diploma, sort of giving a little bit of base business skills training. But what other support have you had? Whether it's empathetic, come on, you can do this type support from your board, or more, definable skills training type stuff. How much have you received and or actively had to go look for? Hugh, I'll stay with you in the prairies, mate.
I've been lucky. Probably the last 10 years has been where I've had a lot of the major support with just change of board and some board membership. So, very much a governance board, but there to support whenever I need them. So we've got, we have a marketing person on the board. We have a project manager on the board. We have, those kinds of roles on the board. So I'm able to tap them to get advice when I'll do stuff. Like if I'm working on something particular and one of the board members has that skill set, like that's what they do in their day-to-day job, I bring them in and I get them to look at it and give me some feedback and get them to buy in with it as well. And then training, just for me, it's been a lot of technical training for a while, but going to various conventions and courses and stuff like that, and a lot of self-learning, right? It's the continual self-learning that you have to do in any role in the
Yeah.
world. So yeah,
But
that's
but
my
it sounds like Hugh, and I know we've spent time on the phone. You've been very good
yeah,
about when you need something just to give me a call. But
yeah.
not that I have all the answers, but it's almost this humility, isn't there, and a surrender that you're going to have to put yourself through a fairly aggressive education program, and you can't expect to do everything on the skills you have, or expect that program to be put in front of you. You've really got to drive your own bus there, right?
Yeah, I do. I have to drive the bus, but it's like you said, Paul, it's getting people who are better than me involved. And I've never been afraid of that, right? I've never been afraid of calling people that are the experts and saying, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah. Yeah.
What can I do better? Um, and that's always helped me.
Yeah. Nino, how about you?
Um, yeah, I mean, I really want to echo that. I lean on the board and the skill set of the board to help me make the best decisions. We all wear blinders, we all have biases, and so um, their perspective on decisions and the skills necessary to be able to be effective in that space is really welcomed. And generally, as well, my orientation isn't towards, well, I understand I'm in an executive director's role and ultimately operational decisions are for me to own and certainly some of them make. Um, I believe in a shared responsibility there. So I'm certainly not scared to go and ask for support where I feel like I need it, because I understand that in order to be effective and know which areas I need to develop in, I need to ask questions that get me to think about those spaces. So I lean on my board currently,
Very
very
good.
much so. Yeah.
Very good. Gregor, how about yourself? I know you've had a good relationship with your board. You all have, but how's that journey of development, particularly in the early years, been for you?
Very supportive. I've got a board that believes a lot in professional development, and one of the first things they did that when I was hired is they sent me to an executive leadership company that their own company, some of them had used. And they essentially ran a bunch of tests on me and poked and prodded my brain to see what I was useless at, and then gave me some tools to figure that part out, which was helpful. I'm actually going to be taking a financial management course aimed at not-for-profits starting in January that's run through Simon Fraser University. So it's it's ongoing. And I think anecdotally, one of the best pieces of advice I got was soon after I was hired was one of our board members said, don't be afraid to hire people smarter than you. And I think Hugh mentioned something along those lines as well, that you don't need to worry that someone's going to make you look bad. Bring in the right people, let them shine, put them in areas where they can make the club better. That's a big part of the job. So that stuck with me.
Yeah, yeah. It's brave to do that. Poor leaders don't. They backburn, right? With poor people who won't challenge them. But you're right. I mean, ideally your goal is to have those people outperforming you by the time 10, 15 years, 20 years from now. Sarah, how about you?
Yeah, super lucky as well to have a great board. Work well with all of them, lean on them to their specific skill sets when I need. Paul Gregor, you know, my president, he's amazing, super supportive, and really great at what he does too. So I'm really lucky. I would also add too, I think IYSL, it was a great conference this week, and you get to meet people and network and lean on different people and get different ideas. But I think here in BC, we also have a really good network and we lean on each other a lot. So I have no problem calling Gregor and saying, "What do you do in these situations?" or "What are you doing?" and getting ideas from each other. So I think that that is really helpful as well. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think it's great. You're also humble. I mean, I got to be honest. Early in my leadership career, this was not. I was not good at this. I thought that CEO meant you had to be master and commander of everything. And I remember, well, after one board meeting, a very nice board member pulled me inside and said, "Paul, it's okay to say you don't know." And I didn't realize, I thought I was fooling everyone, but I was obviously just trying to wing stuff and people could see right through it. And it just took me a little bit of time to sort of understand that, A, you're not fooling anyone, and B, it's okay, and actually very strong leadership to show that kind of humility and lean in on people. I think Sting, the musician, you say about hiring people better than you. Sting, the musician, says he won't hire anyone in his band who he's a better musician than. So he's always surrounded by expertise around him. Um, Final question, guys. We've got a lot of listeners. Canada, North America, Europe, even Australia, New Zealand, Ukraine. We have people listening in, believe it or not. Um, if there's TDs out there considering this, and I've no doubt they are. Like, what would your one piece of advice be to them at that stage when they're sort of you're about to jump off the cliff, so to speak. Sarah, I'll stay with you.
Yeah, one piece of advice. I would say that if you're considering it or somebody's asked you to transition, there's probably those reasons and to have confidence in yourself for it. So much of what we do as a technical director really helped me in this position. So, yeah, I mean, and I think just a lot of what we've touched on, like not, don't feel like you need to know it all as you're going into it. So you're going to learn a lot and you need to ask for help along the way. But if you're ready for that kind of transition, it's a great job and a great way to continue to stay in the game.
Thanks, Sarah. Hugh, what about you? Advice for people looking at this?
I think they've got to really look and say, are they ready to leave the field? Are you ready to get off the field? Um, that's probably one area that hurt me the most was I didn't get off the field immediately once I was in this role. And I sometimes get sucked back into a coaching role. And I've said this year to my technical director, my door is now closed. You cannot come to me next year looking for a coach to coach a team. I just have too much to do off the field that the distraction is too much right now. So I think you really have to be honest with yourself and say, you know what, I'm okay with not coaching for a little while. And
Yeah,
especially when you're
yeah.
new, especially when you're new into the role, like give yourself that 100% jump in. Like, and if you go back to coaching 3 years down the road where you want to coach a U11 team that takes 2 hours a week or something, I don't say you can't do or shouldn't do that. But I think that first year, get out of the coaching role
Yeah,
and
that's a really
try
good
grow.
observation, Hugh. And you probably have to really have that mental conversation with yourself, right? Because you'll probably end up doing it accidentally. And I should
Yeah.
say, like, I mean, every CEO's come from some sort of a background, and I've seen CEOs go back into their previous career more when they're doing their job, not just the technical side. So, for example, I know one CEO in an arts organization, and she had a really strong marketing communications background, and she was finding herself proofreading and correcting press releases from her marketing director. It was total overreach. But that was where she was comfortable. So it's naturally going to do it. But you're saying, Hugh, you've really got to make that almost commitment to yourself and just say, I know
For
I'm,
sure.
yeah, very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Very good. Nino, what do you say?
Yeah. Well, clearly you got hired for a reason, so trust yourself and the skills you have is the first thing. And there isn't one way of doing this, to your point. The idealized version of a CEO can be many different things. And so have the courage to trust what you're good at and the humility to learn the things that you're not, would be my advice.
Thank you. Gregor, you're going to have the last word from Vancouver United.
I think it's important that if you're looking to make that jump, that you really understand what the position is and how different it is from being a technical director. Talk with other people,
Mm,
such as us who've made that jump, um, and know your own strengths and temperament and
mm.
how well that fits the position that you're going to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of that's just good basic leadership, isn't it? Anyway, just I'm hearing a lot of introspection, of self-analysis, self-awareness from you guys, which is great. Folks, this has been a fantastic discussion. I don't want to close off without saying that it's no surprise to me, and you should know this, listeners, and check out the organizations these guys are leading. These four clubs, in my opinion, are four of the top clubs in the entire country. I reference them all the time in the work I do. I was speaking, just about your club, Hugh, just the other day. So yeah, really, it's no surprise that your organizations are thriving under your leadership. And I should say to the people above you in your boardrooms as well, who obviously have unleashed your leadership potential really well and continue to do so. So thank you so much for joining me today. Nino Kovacevic from United DFC in Dartmouth, in Halifax, Nova Scotia. We've Gregor Young from the The great Vancouver United in Vancouver, City of Vancouver, Sir Maglio from Coquitlam Metro Forward in the greater Vancouver area, and Coquitlam in the Vancouver's northeast, and then in the prairies in the wonderful, beautiful city of Regina, we have Hugh Dooley at Queen City United. Thanks, folks, for joining me on the Regista Room.
Imagine not having the chance to play sports as a kid. Imagine not having those memories, those experiences. Imagine your childhood without them.
If I wasn't able to play, I would have missed my friends. I would miss being active and the chance of being competitive. Basketball has taught me how to work as a team, how to communicate, and how to adapt to any situation. My goal is to play for Team Canada and make it to the WNBA.
The skills kids learn through sports are carried with them throughout their lives. But all across Canada, kids are being left on the sidelines because they don't have the resources to play. We owe all kids a chance to experience everything that sport has to offer. Help unleash the full potential in every child. Visit kidsport.ca so all kids can play.
Want to tell us what you think of the show and things we could do to make it better? Tell us now at comments@registaroom.com.
Need help managing your amateur sport organization but don't know where to turn? Look no further than Capitus Consulting, your dependable partner to help you through the challenges and issues you routinely face in and around your sport boardroom. At Capitus Consulting, we're different. We've directly managed amateur sport organizations from community club to national governing body. We understand your side of the fence because we've been there ourselves. We know from experience what makes sport organizations successful and where they go wrong. Reach out to us today at capitusconsulting.ca and let's start building your sport business today.
So there it is, wonderful insights from some of Canada's finest soccer club executives who have come from technical backgrounds, which arguably makes them the most broadly skilled executives in the game in this country. If there are any people out there listening who are considering this path, I hope you are inspired to pursue it from this. But please email me your thoughts at comments@registaroom.com. I'd love to hear your views and experiences, and we'll share them with our listeners on our next episode. So, what to take away from this? Well, as you heard from our panelists, transitioning from soccer technical environments to an executive sport environment isn't easy. You're pushed well outside your comfort zones, and you must be determined, patient, and confident in yourself to ultimately be successful. Along the way, you will without question doubt yourself and second guess your decision to go down this path. When this happens, remember what Nino at United DFC said here. There's a reason you got this job, so back yourself. And I'd add a few other things that I noted listening to the executive leaders that you may also want to think about, not only in career transition like this, but when starting anything new and aiming to be successful at it. Firstly, the importance of empowering and supportive authority above you to allow you to develop into the role over time. In the case of the people we heard from today, that authority was a board of directors, but it could be any boss or any agent of influence that affects your ability to succeed at something new. You need to know you are trusted. Trusted to fail at times. Trusted to say, I don't know. Trusted to learn from mistakes and invest in your development where needed. Trusted to be patient. So if you are considering stepping out of the technical world and into executive management, look critically at your potential new boss. They are crucial to your success in your role, particularly in the early months. Secondly, be disciplined. Disciplined in boldly moving forward into the uncomfortable and not leaning back into the comfortable past that you know and have mastered. Our sport leaders today spoke to that in a number of ways. Giving up technical control, not engaging in things because you know you can, actively avoiding going to your strengths, in this case technical excellence. Make no mistake, this is hard. We naturally gravitate to what we're good at and are familiar with, and as a result are comfortable with. But that isn't growth or development in you. Or the poor person that's got your job, your old job should I say, and is quietly frustrated with your repeated interventions. So, be disciplined. Proactively ask yourself, am I leaning back into the comfortable past? Am I uncomfortable enough? Should I have answered that email or spoken to that parent? Own it, or it will subconsciously own you. And thirdly, the concept of unlearning what you've learned. This is really tough because it feels totally counterintuitive. I should forget about the skills, experience, and expertise I spent my whole life acquiring to in some way move forward? Well, yes. Any coach leaders listening will well know that many soccer players do not automatically make good coaches. Why? Well, often players can't replace a playing mindset with a coaching mindset. They may expect every player they coach to think, act, and perform like they did when they were a player. And that's not how good coaches think and operate. But to get there, players must relearn their craft. And their playing experience, whilst undoubtedly being of value, is not enough to make them great coaches. So actively unlearn what you've learned, and in doing so, be humble, honest, and vulnerable. Don't be ashamed to say, I don't know, or can you explain that to me, or I've never done this before. Skills are great, but honesty and humility is the secret to true growth and success, and it's the sign of a confident leader who people can relate to and trust. Trying to pretend you know it all ultimately gets you into trouble, and guess what? People see through it anyway. You're in the Regista Room, the podcast where amateur soccer goes off-field. As always, it's been my pleasure to be with you. Thanks for listening, and until next episode, wherever you're tuning in from the world, stay safe and stay well.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Regista Room, where amateur soccer goes off-field. Join us again for the next episode. Subscribe today at capituslearning.com or listen wherever you access your favorite podcasts.